Hey, my name is Lance, and in this video, I'm going to be walking you through how you can migrate a WordPress website from GoDaddy's managed WordPress hosting over to a cPanel style of hosting. I won't dive too deeply into it here, but basically, some of the reasons you would want to do this is that cPanel, number one, is a little bit more stable. It does not have an automatic update feature, and so if WordPress or a plugin that you have rolls out an update that is incompatible, you will avoid automatically updating to it. So it gives you that control, that ability to choose when you should or should not do an update. Additionally, cPanel tends to be significantly easier to manage when you need to do any back-end work, which ideally isn't very often, but on those rare occasions where you do need to do it, cPanel is going to make it a lot easier to do it. So for example, if you have a plugin that needs to use IonCube Loader, it's pretty much going to be impossible to do on GoDaddy's managed WordPress platform, but through cPanel, it's actually incredibly simple to do. So long story short, it's more powerful on cPanel, it's more stable without a shadow of a doubt. Frankly, I usually recommend that everybody builds their WordPress website on cPanel, but that's not necessarily the case. So this is the video on how you can move from managed WordPress, if that is what you had previously, over to cPanel. So let's dive into that here. This is not my account, but I did have an acquaintance who needed to move from managed WordPress over to cPanel. So I'm going to use their website, worldfamilytrading.com, as the example for this walkthrough. Obviously, you need to also make sure that you have cPanel set up or purchased into your account. Now, this screen's a little bit buggy, but normally when you have a new cPanel, it'll have a blue setup button here rather than blue manage button. So if you were to click it, it takes you to this screen where you can choose a domain that you already own, or you can enter a subdomain. Now in this case, since I'm going to be migrating worldfamilytrading.com, obviously you can't set it up under both of them. So because it's already attached to the managed WordPress hosting, it's not going to allow me to also simultaneously attach it to the cPanel. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to set this up as new.worldfamilytrading.com. And that way it'll just be a subdomain, and then I can change that once the migration is completed. So you'll click on next, and then it's usually going to ask you where you want to put the server. This is a North American business, so I'm going to put this in North America. And it's going to ask if you want to create a WordPress website. The answer is yes. You do want to have a blank WordPress install on here. So I am just going to go ahead and enter those credentials now. And once I have these credentials in here, I'm just going to click the blue finish button. And once you've clicked on that blue finish button, it's going to give you this screen here where it's just saying that it's provisioning the cPanel. It's just going to be setting this up here. Usually takes about 1 to 3 minutes at the most. So just wait for that to finish, and then we'll pick up on the next screen. Perfect. Now, once it's done, it's going to say the onboarding is successfully completed. You can go build the website. If you were to click here, it pretty much takes you directly into the cPanel here. You don't really need to worry about this too much. We're not really going to use this at the moment. The next step, once we've created this and we've set up the initial cPanel here, is we need to do some stuff on the source website, the managed WordPress hosting. So in order to do that, we need to go over to the hosting for the managed WordPress account. I always like to just go into the top right, click on the little person, and then go to My Products from the drop-down menu, which will always take you back to the My Account area, sometimes referred to as Maya. And from here, I'm going to look for Manage WordPress. I need to go manage the site that I'm working on here. Because the first thing that we need to do is we need to create a dump of the database. Basically, we need to download the database is kind of the simpler way of looking at it. So in order to do that, once you're in the hosting control center for the Managed WordPress site, in the bottom right, you're going to see Database PHPMyAdmin. If you click on View, it'll give you a link to log in to the PHPMyAdmin database. Now, you're going to use the username and the password here. You can just toggle the password in order to show it. And once you click on this link, it's going to open up this window here. So just copy and paste the information in there. And just go ahead and log in. On the left-hand side, you're usually going to see two options. Information schema, which is completely irrelevant to what we need to do here. And then some sort of database table. In this case, because the website is named World Family Trading, you can see the database begins with WORL, short for World Family Trading. So this is the database that we need to be looking at here. So if we click on this table, it'll load up this screen here. It's got a bunch of the WordPress tables, etc., etc. But what we need to do is go over to the Export tab because we need to download the database. So let's click over there. And then you're going to land on this pretty confusing looking screen here. Now what we really need to do is just leave everything by default, other than you need to check this little box near the left where it's Save As File, Compression, None, and we're just going to click Go in order to download the database. You'll sometimes get a pop-up, what do you want to do with it, open it or save it. We need to save it. Opening it is useless, so we need to save this file. So you're just going to click OK. Now, once you've started a download for that, depending on the size of your database for your website, it may take a while. Either way, the next thing that we need to do is start downloading some of the content from the WordPress site that we're migrating. So we can exit out of the database. We don't really need that there anymore. And we're going to go back over to the hosting control panel for the WordPress website. We need to access the website and download the content folder via FTP. Now, in order to do that, you're going to want some sort of FTP client. I always recommend using FileZilla. So if you just go Google FileZilla, you can download it right there. Obviously, make sure that you're downloading the correct version. So look up whether you're on 64-bit or 32-bit or whatever, and you just download it. I've already got FileZilla downloaded, so I can't really show that. But nonetheless, once you do have FileZilla downloaded, if you open it, this is the screen that you're going to get. This is how we're going to connect to the website files in order to download them so that we can then re-upload them onto the new cPanel hosting. So in order to actually connect to the FTP, once you've got FileZilla downloaded, you're going to be in this hosting control center for the old WordPress site. Remember, this is the managed WordPress site. And in the bottom right, you're going to see SFTP user. If you click on view, it's going to give you the information that you need. Now, the one thing I will say, it's going to say host name, and then it's going to have the domain name. I actually don't recommend using the domain name for the host. It tends to work a little bit better if you use the direct IP address, which is also under the settings, conveniently enough. So I'm going to use the IP address for the host, and then if I copy this for the user, and I just show the password and paste that in there. Cool, so now I've got the host, user, and password. The one thing you do want to keep in mind is that Managed WordPress exclusively uses port 22 in order to connect. So once that's done, you can just go ahead and click Quick Connect, and it'll start to connect to the server. Sometimes it might get some errors or something like that. I really wouldn't worry about it because eventually it'll load up here. As you can see, even though there was that error at first, it loaded the content just fine. Now, what we need to do here is we need to download one folder specifically. It's going to be the WP content folder. Now, I realize this screen can be a little bit confusing here, so let me break this down a little bit so you're not getting lost. In the top left area, this is your overall file structure on your computer. So I'm on a Windows PC, so this is going to be my C drive, user is me, and then I'm on my desktop. So if I go to the desktop, and you'll see that the only things I actually have on my desktop are down in here. So this is kind of the overall file structure on the left of your computer, and then beneath that, whichever folder you select, it'll display the contents of that area. So if I look at my desktop, these are the only things that I currently have on my desktop. This was the SQL or the database file that we had downloaded earlier. This is some other stuff. All I need to do, though, is get this WP content folder from the managed WordPress site and download that to my desktop. So if you haven't been following along, left-hand side is your computer. Right-hand side is the hosting server that you are connected to. So you'll see that we're in the HTML folder, which is always where we are going to find the WordPress content. And then when you're in the HTML folder, it'll show you the actual content right here. So this is the folder that we need. I'm just going to drag this over to my desktop, and it's going to start downloading files. So it'll start queuing things up here. This could take a little while. It really just depends on how much stuff you have within your WordPress content folder. So if you have very, very few plugins or a very small website, this is probably going to go pretty quickly. If you've got a whole ton of stuff, then this might take a little bit. Alright, so at this point, I've got my content all downloaded. The WP content folder is finally on my desktop. One thing that I didn't have pop up, but you may run into when you're downloading it, is sometimes when you're downloading with FileZilla, you might have a little gray box pop up that says, hey, there's duplicate files here. Which one do you want to keep? On the right hand side, there's going to be some options. I would always overwrite the older content with the newer content. And if you don't get that box, that's not going to make any sense. But if you do get that box, you'll notice that the two files that it shows you, one of them is going to have a newer date and the other one is going to have an older date. And on the right hand side, where it allows you to choose which one you would like to keep, it'll let you choose the newer one. Always keep the newer one. That's pretty much always going to be the move that you want to make. And like I said, that's really only if that pop-up box appears. But otherwise, at this point, we've got the SQL file, aka the database, downloaded, and we've got the WP content folder downloaded. The other thing that's a good idea to download is the .htaccess file. So once again, this is going to be in the HTML folder within the managed WordPress hosting that you should be connected to currently. It's a good idea to download that one as well. So same thing as before, you're just going to drag that over to whatever folder you want. In this case, I'm just downloading it to my desktop. The htaccess file is always going to be extremely small, so it should be a fairly quick download. And then once you've got the .htaccess file downloaded, the very next step is to upload the WP-content folder that you just downloaded from the original managed WordPress hosting, and we're going to upload that over into the cPanel hosting. So in order to do that, we need to disconnect from the current managed WordPress host. We can just get rid of these credentials here. And then we need to go back to the hosting for the cPanel in order to grab those credentials. So as usual, through the GoDaddy website, we can just go to the person in the top right, click on it, and then you're going to click on My Products from the dropdown. And then once you're on the My Products page, we'll scroll down to the web hosting section. You can either click Manage All or click on it to expand it, and then click the Manage button. Either way works. And to connect via FTP for the cPanel, you're going to use the IP address located in the upper left area. You're going to use the cPanel login in the bottom right area under the settings. And you need to change your password. By default, the cPanel password on GoDaddy's hosting is going to be randomly generated. So unless you've changed it in the past, I guarantee you will not know it. So just go ahead and click the blue change text. And then you can type in whatever you want for the password there, as long as it meets the password criteria. And just go ahead and change the password. It should update that pretty much immediately. And then use that password you just changed it to in FileZilla. Now, unlike managed WordPress, for the port you're going to be using 21. 21 is generally the regular port that you would use for FTP. It's just that managed WordPress uses secure FTP, which is port 22. But to connect to the cPanel, we'll just use 21. As a side note, you can actually leave this blank because by default, FileZilla is designed to use port 21. So I'm going to quick connect. Just go ahead and trust any pop-up boxes that show up. And now we'll be connected to the cPanel. Now, we're going to be working in the public_HTML folder, so let's select that. And for that one, I've already installed WordPress, but if you don't already have it installed, you can just go into the cPanel Installatron, and you can install WordPress from there. It's super easy. GoDaddy already has a guide on that, so I'm not going to cover that here. I will mention one thing, though. In this video, I am migrating over the primary domain. The primary domain for cPanel is always going to sit in the public_HTML folder. If you were doing this for an add-on domain, it would be in a separate folder within public_HTML. So you would have another folder here that would not begin with WP, and it would not be the CGI-bin. So like, let's say I had a different website, domainname.com, but it was an add-on domain, it was not the primary domain. Well, in that case, it would be in the public_HTML, but then it would be in a separate folder, usually called domainname.com. To give you another example, in case you're not quite following me there, if I had the website logitech.com as an add-on domain, my primary domain is in this folder, and then logitech.com, my add-on domain or my separate website, would be in a subfolder here, kind of somewhere in this series right here, and it would probably be called logitech.com or something like that. If you're not sure how to find that out yourself, you can always go back into your cPanel and you can search for the add-on domains, click on it, and it'll show you down in this section. So if you're not sure which folder you're supposed to be using for an add-on domain, aka not the primary domain, this is where you can go ahead and check on that. And like I said, just make sure you have WordPress installed to that folder. That way it's already got all of the files in there. In this case, to kind of get back on track here, we do already have the WordPress files in here. So what we need to do is upload the content that we downloaded from the old hosting and upload this onto the new one. So really easy, you're just going to drag it all the way over into this structure here. Basically, we're going to be overwriting the WP content that's already in here with the one that we've got downloaded to the desktop. So let's start that process here, because this will generally take a while. This is a fantastic example. This was that gray box I had been talking about earlier. You're going to get something along the lines of the target file already exists, and it'll show you when they were created, etc. So the source, that's in this case, that's the one that I've downloaded to the desktop, and the target is the one that we've got already installed here. In this case, you're going to want to overwrite everything that is in this fresh WordPress install, the one that's just on the cPanel and doesn't actually have any real content in it. You want to overwrite everything with the content from the managed WordPress hosting platform. So what you can do is, for action, you can click overwrite, and you can apply this to only the current queue. So basically what this is going to do is, every time this box wants to pop up during this transfer, it's just going to automatically overwrite it. So I'm going to start that. Keep hitting OK on these silly boxes. And then it's going to start the upload here. Now in this case, this is a fairly large website. As you can see, it's about 216 megabytes. So this is going to take quite a while. In the meantime, while that content is being uploaded to the cPanel, you can also start working on the database. So the next step that we're going to be working on here is we're going to be dropping the tables from the existing database. That way we can replace them with the database that we've downloaded from the managed WordPress hosting. If that sounds complicated, don't worry about it. I'm going to be walking you through it here. So what we're going to want to do is we're going to go on to the cPanel hosting, and we're going to go into the cPanel admin area to access the phpMyAdmin. So we'll use the search function at the top, phpMyAdmin. It'll show up automatically, and it should log us in automatically as well. Now we're going to select our databases in the upper left area here, and you're going to see two options. One of them is information underscore schema, and the other one is going to be some kind of random string, but it'll usually end with WP. That's the one that we're going to be working on. Information schema, you will pretty much never, ever need to touch. So we'll select the database, and you're going to get a bunch of these tables here. What we need to do is check the box at the bottom that says check all, and then on the box, we're going to be clicking drop. It's going to ask us, do you really want to execute the following query, drop these tables? And the answer is yes, we do want to drop all of these tables. So we'll click yes, it'll start up, and then boom, all of our tables are gone. Not a big deal. Like I said, this is just a fresh WordPress install, so we could easily just recreate it if we really needed to. But either way, we're actually doing this so that we can replace it with the old table. Alright, so now once all of the tables are gone, now what we need to do is import the tables that we had downloaded from the old website. So make sure that you've got the proper database selected on the left. Like I said, it should end in underscore WP something, not information schema. From there, we're going to go over to the import tab, and it's going to allow us to browse for the file that we're trying to import. Remember, we're uploading that .sql file. In this case, I had downloaded the SQL file or the database to my desktop, so that's where it is. Odds are it's probably in your downloads folder, but I'll let you figure out wherever you've downloaded it. Either way, once you have it selected, you're going to click on open, and it should show as a .sql file when you kind of hover over it there. All these other ones you can go ahead and leave standard, and we're going to click on go to start the import. So once you click on go, it'll show that it's starting to import there, and it'll probably take a little bit. All you're really going to see here in the bottom is that it's kind of in the bottom left area. It'll show that it's sending the request. And depending on the browser that you're using, you'll generally see some sort of progress marker up here. Assuming you have a small database, this should go fairly quickly. The one thing that gets a little bit tricky, and it even does kind of hint at it right here, is that you can run into a PHP timeout limit. And that'll happen if the database that you're uploading is extremely large. You have two options in that case. You can either upload portions of the database, and the way that you would do that is by segmenting out the tables when you originally download them. If you need help on that, I'm going to include the GoDaddy guide on how you can download portions of a table. Otherwise, I mean, in this case, it's gone through successfully, but if there had been an issue, you can also try increasing the PHP limits. So if you go back to your cPanel, type in PHP, and then if you go to select PHP version, in the upper right area, you'll see some blue text that says switch to PHP options. So you can click on that, and you can change this value right here, maximum execution time. By default, it's set to be about 30 seconds, but you can boost that up to some absurd number. You can do like 3,000. The other ones that you would potentially want to change would be the memory limit, which by default is set to 128, although you can boost that all the way up to 512. You could also change the upload max file size. This one should not be a factor, but you can boost that up to 1 gig. Those three values would be the ones that you would want to change, and then you would want to save those changes, of course. Like I said, though, that's really only something that you need to worry about if you're dealing with uploading a very large database. So think something that's maybe 50 megabytes or more. You might want to boost those settings prior to uploading them. That way the upload goes successfully. Now at this point, you're pretty much most of the way done here. I'm still waiting on my website to upload here in FileZilla, but I would also recommend going through some of these tables, making sure they look correct. So the main table you're going to want is the underscore users table. Now I'm not going to click on that underscore users table because it shows all of the user information, but you want to make sure that table as well as the user meta are both there because that's going to contain the login credentials. Realistically, you need all of these tables, but those tables in particular, if they're not there, you're not going to be able to log into the website. Alright, perfect. So at this point, my upload is complete. If I double check the WP content folder on the cPanel server by accessing it, I can see that my plugins are all installed in here. So we're getting there pretty close. There's a few last steps that we need to do though. Within the WP-content folder, there's going to be a section called MU-plugins. These are the plugins that come with GoDaddy's managed WordPress hosting, so we need to go in there and disable them. So let's go open up this folder, and we're just going to delete these two files. So we're going to go ahead and select them. We're going to delete the file and the folder. You're also going to want to download the .htaccess file from the old hosting and move that into the new hosting. So by default with the fresh WordPress install, it's going to have a .htaccess file in there. In this case, I've already renamed it to .htaccess.bak or .backup. This will disable it. From there, you want to upload your old htaccess file into your new server, and that will, in the process, probably fix up all the links, because if your links aren't working on your website at the end of all of this, usually that's because your .htaccess file is broken. All right, now one of the things that we're going to want to do once we have the database uploaded is we're going to want to edit the configuration file for WordPress. That way it works with these tables, because normally it would be WP underscore blankety blank. But in this case, we have these tables right here to kind of show us what's going on. So we need to go in here, view and edit these. And we're going to be looking to copy this information right here. We need to get the table prefix. So if you don't know what the table prefix is, you can always click on the users tab or maybe even the terms tab, and it'll give you this one right here. So anything in front of the underscore terms or underscore users is going to be part of the table prefix. So let's copy that, and then we're going to want to edit the configuration file. Now, I'm using Notepad++ to edit this. You can download it for free. There's no bloatware or anything like that. So I highly recommend it. It makes it a lot easier. Anyways, I'm going to use the search function, Control F. And I'm going to look for table underscore prefix. And this will take me to the prefix area of the table. So rather than it being just WP underscore, I need to make it WP underscore, you know, all the extra stuff that was in there. And then I need to save this and exit out of it. And that should re-upload it to the server, or at least it's going to ask you, do you want to upload this back to the server? Go ahead and click yes. And that'll update the tables so that they actually work with everything that we have uploaded here. Now that we fixed up those database tables in here, there's one other thing that we're going to want to fix, and that's the actual site tables. Because right now it's currently on new.worldfamilytrading.com, or your website might be new.madeupdomainname.com, whatever. In order to preview the website before we actually finalize these changes, we need to change the options on the cPanel site. So keep in mind, we're not working on the managed WordPress at all at this point. It's irrelevant. We've pretty much got everything uploaded here. We just want to preview the website before we move the domain name over to make sure that it's loading properly. So if you go to the underscore options table, by default, you should see it pointing over to the old website. And that's because that's where we had the database from. So obviously the database that we copied over is going to show the old website. So we need to edit this and point it to the new website here. So let's go ahead. Now, the old website had an SSL on it. This one does not at the moment. So rather than having HTTPS, we're just going to put HTTP. And then rather than www, I'm going to change it to new dot because that's the temporary website that I have it on. The two tables that we're changing here are going to be site URL and the home. Generally speaking, these should be right next to each other, but sometimes you do have to go all the way down and go over to a separate page, usually not past page 2 or 3. But no matter what, the option name for one of them is going to be site URL, and the option name for the other one is going to be home. Those are the two that we need to edit here in order to preview the website. So once again, I'm going to change this. Go ahead and click go to save it. And now both of these changes should be there. So what happens if we actually try to visit this website? Does it pull up properly? Well, the answer appears to be yes. So you can see we're at new.worldfamilytrading.com. This is what the website's pretty much looking like here. And if we go to just normal worldfamilytrading.com, you can see that this is what the website looks like. It looks exactly the same. So that's a good thing. We can say for sure, without a shadow of a doubt, that we have properly moved over everything. We made sure that those final steps in terms of updating the tables, updating it within the, or updating the table prefix within the WordPress configuration also went through. And then in order to actually preview the website, so at this point, we pretty much got all of those final steps done. So to recap, at least those final steps there, because I did them a little bit out of order, we dropped the tables, we uploaded the SQL file, which had the new tables in here. We took the table prefix, which is going to be this one here, WP underscore blah, 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 underscore options is the ending there. So pretty much everything in front of options, or let's say you're in a different table such as links, you can grab it here, everything in front of links. We took that and we put that into the, we put it into the config PHP. All we had to do there was search for table underscore prefix, and then we fixed that. Before it was just WP underscore, now it's got the proper table right there. And then to finalize it and actually preview the website, we had to go to the options and change up the site URL in the home, and that allowed us to preview the website by setting it to new.worldfamilytrading.com. So at this point, we've got it up and running. All we really need to do here is finalize the domain change. And we need to move that domain from the managed WordPress hosting over to the cPanel. Now the good news is that this is pretty easy to do. We just need to go back into our GoDaddy, and we need to go to the products area. Let's go ahead and manage all for the WordPress. Let's go to the settings, and we need to modify the domain. So this is always going to be in the upper right next to the WordPress admin button. If we go to the domains, it'll let you select the domain that you want to use here. In this case, what you want to do in order to remove it from Manage WordPress is you want to change it back to this default domain here. It's the one that comes with it, so you're going to make that one the primary. And this change can take anywhere from about 20 seconds to 5 minutes. If it's taking longer than that, then you might need to call up GoDaddy to have them force that change through. Sometimes this Managed WordPress hosting does like to get stuck, so don't be surprised there if it takes a little bit. Alright, perfect. And now that we've got the domain name that originally came with the Managed WordPress, and you can tell because it's always going to be myftpupload.com, we need to remove the other domain. So whatever the primary domain was, you just click on the 3 dots to the right. You can click on remove, and this will completely detach it from this hosting account. This is a necessary step because if you don't detach it over here, cPanel is not going to let it attach it over on that end. So once again, I'm going to let this detach. You can see that's done. Now, even once this domain name disappears out from this screen, you should probably give it an extra 5 or 10 minutes for it to completely detach from the hosting before you go and upload it to the cPanel. So I'm going to check back in a moment. Alright, and then once we've given it enough time, maybe about 5 to 10 minutes for the domain to fully detach from the Managed WordPress hosting, we can go ahead and go back over to the cPanel hosting. And we're going to attach the domain over there. So for this one, I'm going to be adding it as the primary domain. If you were working on as an add-on domain, you would attach it that way. Nonetheless, I can select this from the drop-down menu, whereas before it was not in here. I can click on Change Domain. Perfect. Successfully attached that. Now the last thing is, earlier we had gone into the cPanel and changed the site URL and home within the database. That way we could preview the site. In this case, we actually need to change it back so that way we can get the live site back up. So I'm going to hop in here. We're going to be looking for the underscore options table. And we're going to edit the site URL and home again. So in this case, I'm just going to get rid of that. I'm going to click go. And I'm going to get rid of this one as well. And once again, I'm going to click go. And in this case, the site is up and running. Now, I will mention if your website with Managed WordPress hosting previously had an SSL attached to it, you will need to rekey that SSL over to your cPanel hosting in order for the site to function properly. Otherwise, you will get connection not secure errors, which are errors caused by not having an SSL on the website. So in order to do that, I'm going to rekey the SSL because it was on the old website. So let's go in here. And this is the one that I'm looking for here. So I'm going to rekey this one. So we can do that by manage. Go to rekey and manage. Easiest way to rekey it is just go to change encryption algorithm, save, and then save the changes. So I'm going to give it maybe 5 to 10 minutes here for this SSL change to go through. The technical time frame on that is up to 48 hours. The realistic time frame is, like I said, about 5 to 10 minutes. Once that's done, I'm going to preview the website one more time. I'm going to, oh, hey, see? Looks like it already went through. So, looks like we are good to go. So, appreciate you sticking along with this video here. I know it was a little bit all over the place, but thanks for watching, and hopefully this guide helps you out.